Welcome to Parliament. It's on this wonderful, quiet day, not much going on. The weather was ordered, but it didn't arrive. Somebody who wasn't ordered arrived. I think there's a few people out there talking about him. Yeah, so it's a quiet time here. You know, the odd president visiting, a little discussion about Brexit for the last 3 years, about a dozen people running in the Grand National to see who's going to get to the end. But otherwise, very quiet. Wonderful to see you all here. Some really old friends, and old, I mean, met you a long time ago, not old. Wonderful wealth of experience. Look, these events, for me, are very informal. This is about networking. This is about us having a little bit of time out just to think about some really important areas. You won't get this 2 hours back again. You won't get this 2 hours to sit back and think about some really crucial areas that we face every day, but it's just too complicated. So, you know, life goes on, it's busy, the bridges are burning. We're here formally to observe the United Nations International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression, confirming the UN's acknowledgement of the pain suffered by children around the world who are victims of physical, mental, emotional abuse. So it's really important in terms of the rights of the child. I feel a little bit of a fraud because I know many of you here, you're experts in working with children, not only in this country but around the world. Dame Asha Kemke, lovely to see you, the amount of work you've done in terms of higher education, colleges, apprenticeships. Lord Watson, you know, great to have a shadow minister here with us. Lucy, who's been working in Uganda, working with the Ugandan government. Jeffrey, who runs a university technical college. We have people from my hometown of Bradford, one from Merlin Top Primary School, and some dear friends like Anne. And we have colleagues from Social Work England. So we have a big representation here. We're setting up a new regulator, we're learning, we're thinking. So all this is really helpful just to help us think through these really crucial issues. I'm really pleased that the person who sort of brought this to my attention, in a sense, who's hosting today, Zelna, who you're going to hear from shortly, is the person who's, I think, who has a special talent, who will make a difference in this space. I met Zelna. Somebody sent me an email from Australia, said, "Will you meet this woman?" So I said, "Oh, okay." She's a life coach. Life coach, what's it? Life coach. Yes, of course. She's from South Africa. Oh, that's okay. My mum was born in South Africa. My wife was born in South Africa. So we'll, you know. And I met Zelna, and she sent me this book called The Secret Parent. And you thought, you know, what is she? An educator, a coach, a teacher, a social worker, an advisor, a trainer? She's a secret parent. I suppose that's the best way to describe you. And she'll tell you all about that. It's a fantastic book, highly recommended. And I think the creation of the Kids Life Studio is something that has been recognised as a potential game changer in helping children around the world. And there couldn't be anything more important at this time of our lives. Children are really suffering around the world, but certainly here, in terms of violent aggression. I think it's a really tough time. I think sometimes we overlook it. It's a tough time growing up in the UK today. If you pick up a newspaper, you'll see, you know, over the last few years, children, young people aged between 5 and 19, 1 in 8 have a mental health disorder. Yet only 1 in 4 actually access specialist mental health services. You know, really, really important. And I think the Kids Life Studio programme for creating and supporting people to become kids' life coaches provides a really effective and essential way to reach more children. And I think it's life-affirming work that also benefits the coaches themselves. And I'm sure Zelna will tell you, we've some life coaches that Zelna works with from across the globe, from the USA, from Bolivia, Switzerland, Hungary, and South Africa. Have I got them all? And of course here as well. I think children are exposed to violence in many different ways. And it leads to profound problems that have lasting effects throughout their lives. You know, over my career, I've seen them in mental health wards, I've seen them in prisons. Children in homes where one parent is being abused may feel fearful, anxious, always be on guard, wondering when the next violent event will happen. And this can affect children of different ages. So if we take the three, children in preschool who witness intimate partner violence may start doing things they used to do when they were younger, bedwetting, thumb-sucking, increased crying, whining. They may also develop difficulty falling or staying asleep, show signs of terror such as stuttering or hiding, and show signs of severe separation anxiety. And school-age children may feel guilty about the abuse and blame themselves for it. And it's easy as teachers when we're busy and, to miss that. We know that domestic violence and abuse hurts children's self-esteem. They may not participate in school activities or get good grades. They have fewer friends than others and get into trouble more often. They also may display a lot of physical symptoms like headaches and stomach aches. Sometimes it's easy to fall into the trap of saying, that child, just hopefully today will help us think through that. Even teenagers who witness abuse may act out in negative ways, many times with family members skipping school, engage in risky behaviours, unprotected sex, using alcohol and drugs, low self-esteem, trouble making friends. We know all this. It's just having the opportunity to come around the table and think through what can we do about it. And hopefully Zelna will give us some practical ways and solutions to help us think that through. Because we cannot let the rising tide of despair amongst children and young people continue. And as Zelna often says, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we are all that village. We are all responsible. It can't just be left to the state or the parents. We all have to address this collectively. And hopefully today you'll hear about Zelna's work and you'll see ways in which you can do something that we can all work together. I'm hoping we'll keep you all on an email system to share ideas, because the worst thing is coming up with some great ideas, networking and walking away without keeping that connection going, without growing this, without following it up. And let's do some practical ways all the way through. The whole issue is very important globally. It's very important to the Commonwealth. Our dear friend Baroness Scotland, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, wanted to be here today. She's halfway across the world, but she was so keen to be here, she sent a video. And I think we're just going to show you the video first, and then I'm going to let Zelna do her bit.
Firstly, can I say how really sorry I am that I'm not able to be with you in person. There can be no other issue which will engage our hearts and our minds than the way in which we need to protect children who are the innocent victims of aggression. This initiative is one of lasting importance to all of us. We know that when Gracia Michel, that great woman of the Commonwealth, made her report 25 years ago, she identified that it wasn't just the physical damage caused to children that we needed to worry about. We needed to worry too about the mental health impact that such aggression would have on them. Lasting stains which will destroy, disable, and maybe affect in the long term their futures. And so as we come together tonight, I hope we will be concentrating on the actions that we can take to make it better. Peace in the home is something that I have dedicated many years to trying to deliver, because we know that if a child grows up in a home which is scarred by violence and aggression, that child will be adversely impacted by it. And if we have no peace in our homes, then we will have no peace in our world. The mental scars that are left on the children who are affected by violence is long-lasting. I saw myself when I went to Rwanda for the 25th commemoration of the genocide, how torn such children can be, even 25 years after such a horrendous event had taken place. So as you all come together tonight, know that I am with you in spirit and hoping that we will come up with the actions that we can take to heal some of the damage that has been left, the indelible prints on the lives of such children, so that we will bring hope, healing, and a greater harmony. I wish everyone the very best, and know that, as I said in the beginning, I will be with you in spirit, even if I cannot be with you in person.
I must say that Baroness Scotland is a really tough act to follow. So, honourable lords, ladies, distinguished guests, colleagues, family and friends, this is a very special day for me, and I especially want to say thank you to Lord Patel for inviting me today and hosting me. He shared a little bit of our story of how we met, but I'd like to just embellish a little bit on that, because it wasn't just about a lady in Australia. You see, some of you are possibly wondering how it all came to happen. So, last year on World Mental Health Day, 10th of October, I did possibly the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've done some scary things, okay? I'm South African, ex-South African. I have eaten mapani worms. I've had a 3-meter boa constrictor snake around my neck. I have water skied in crocodile-infested rivers on the border of Angola. I have climbed an indoor climbing structure of 22.5 meters high with one of my clients. In fact, Julia is here. Julia, stand up for me. So Julia coached me to get over my fear of heights. So I've done a couple of, thank you, Jules. I've done a couple of really scary things in my life, but none of them were as scary as last year when I launched my book, because I felt vulnerable, naked, scared. I was really scared that people would judge me. Because, you see, once the book was out in the open, people would know that I was labelled with a mental illness. People would know that I was admitted to a psychiatric ward twice. And I wondered how that would impact on my career. So the reasons behind that was my story of not being a biological mom, and the trauma that it had on my life is what impacted on my mental health. And, you know, once the book was out, there was no turning back from the fact that people would know who I was, the real me. But, you know, I thought that was okay, because the real me is the person who stands for children. And that is why I'm so honoured to be here on this commemoration day to commemorate the innocent children victims of aggression. And I'd like to share a little story with you, because when I was 11 years old, I was impacted on by aggression. Shortly after 10 p.m. on a Thursday evening in 1985, 24th of October, a Russian-made SZ-6 bomb that had 7 kilograms of TNT was detonated in an all-girls secondary school. Luckily, the terrorists botched up the bomb, and it exploded at night, because had it exploded the next day, there would have been school children in my school who would have been hurt. Now, at the time, I was oblivious to the carnage that this would have caused. I was 11 years old. I was sleeping, cuddled up with my Pink Panther in bed, my handmade little Pink Panther. And later, this mangled classroom became my art classroom. It was rebuilt, and it became an urban legend, the story about the bomb blast, and everybody forgot about it, except for one of the terrorists, Zinto Sele. His family refused to forget. You see, he went missing in the bomb blast because he had blown himself up. His family didn't know, so they continued searching for him. And at the time of his death, he was age 22. He was a young father, and his family was really loving, having no idea that he was a terrorist. So just keep that in your mind, and let's fast forward about 30 years to Friday, 15th of September, 2017. At around 8:20 a.m., another crudely made bomb went off at Parsons Green Station, which some of you might know. And this was a busy commuter train filled with children, and luckily there were no deaths, but 51 people were injured. Now, the person responsible this time was an 18-year-old. He was a foster child, Ahmed Hassan, and he was an Iraqi asylum seeker. And he made his way to Britain via Istanbul and Paris and Calais in the back of a lorry as a 16-year-old. When he entered the country, he told the officials that he had been trained how to kill. He'd been abducted and trained how to kill. But this was not passed on to his foster carers. His foster carers since have been taken away the privilege of fostering children. They were awarded an MBE by the Queen for their 40 years of service because their foster son had built a bomb at their kitchen table without their knowledge while they were away. So why these two stories? Why these two men? So just like my 11-year-old self, the Parsons Green bomb blast impacted on me too, because I was on I would call it a position. I was coaching a little autistic boy in Parsons Green, and that was my stop every day for a year. I got out at that station, and only months later, this bomb blast went off. So the thread of those two men's lives, these terrorists, are forever intertwined with mine, and intertwined with the children and the families who were impacted by these bomb blasts. But you know, this is not just my story. This is our story. Because all of us are impacted. And as you can see, my 11-year-old self was impacted, my 43-year-old self. We are all impacted, and it's something that goes across the board. So I think it's fair to say that every adult perpetrator who harms a child, like these two men, was once a child that was in some way harmed too. Now, these two young men, they faced very contrasting childhoods. And I think it's fair to say that both of them are considered terrorists, both of them were punished, but one was from a loving, supportive family, and the other from a disintegrated family and in the foster care system. Both of them took actions and choices that deliberately impacted on other people, but they were raised on different continents, they had different circumstances. 18-year-old Hassan, his dad was killed in an air raid in Baghdad. He lost both his parents at the age of 6, but we cannot let them blame their childhood for the choices they make as adults. We can't. We have to rather ask, why did they turn into grown-ups who abandoned their dreams and chose a destructive path? Now, the single factor that's at the core of all adults who make bad choices, like Lord Patel said, is trauma. Trauma in childhood changes the brain physiology. And there's been large-scale population studies that show that where there is significant trauma, such as Lord Patel mentioned, abuse in the family, alcohol abuse, parents in prison, mental health issues, there is going to be a risk factor on the children. Now, the exposure to these risk factors exponentially increase a child's risk of setbacks later in life. And it's said that 50% of all adult mental health problems are already identified in childhood. The Center of the Developing Child at Harvard University in 2012 did a wonderful study on the science of neglect. And they looked at how the persistent absence of a single figure in a child's life led to bad choices. You see, violence and aggression against children really puts them in a precarious position. And it leaves us in the position of labeling them as survivors or victims. And I don't think either of those are worthy for any child. So I say, why wait until a child has a mental health label? I think we should be doing more. And, you know, the irony is that my kids' life coaching model, I developed purely by coincidence and out of need. And it started here in a Brixton classroom. And, you know, I spoke in the beginning about how scary it was eating mapani worms, but it was pretty scary, me teaching in Brixton too. You know, after dark in winter or early in the mornings, I had to walk the 1.2 miles to that school, and my life was often under threat. I was threatened with knives. I was kicked. I was hit. I was punched. You know, I was bitten, but I was there every day for those children because I really cared. And, you know, Without realizing it, these 10 children that I was given as a short-term supply, I was just asked to let them pass numeracy and literacy. That was my assignment. Just get these kids to pass. They're impossible. But you know, as a young teacher back then in 2001, nobody in my teacher training had taught me how to deal with children who were facing trauma. On my first day in that classroom, I was met with a 12-year-old girl who was doing a seductive lap dance on another little boy in the class, also age 12. What I later found out was that both of these children had mothers who were prostituting themselves outside the school on hard drugs, and these children were expected to learn, and nobody had informed me. I hadn't been told this. I uncovered this as I went along. You know, all of these children, they were failing dismally, and I knew that I had to do something. So I decided to coach them. I had no idea what that meant, but I found out. And I developed my coaching model in that classroom. And within 3 months, I got all the children to pass. I got the children behaving. I got the children feeling really great about themselves. And, you know, I would like to think that I changed the trajectory of their life. It takes one adult, just one. But teachers don't have the time in the classrooms. They're so inundated. My dream is to see every single teacher trained as a kids' life coach. I'm just putting that out there. Use it, don't use it. But I didn't have the skills. I had to figure it out for myself. And, you know, for me, it was more important to put things into perspective for these children and open their minds up to future possibilities and to give them a bit of hope. I always say, if I can just bottle hope and give every child this little bottle and let them take a little sip every day, that would be wonderful. But that's just dreaming, right? But kids' life coaching, the model that I've created, does just that. It gives these children hope because they have a tangible toolkit to be able to deal with whatever it is they're facing, because we cannot control what's happening on the outside world. But as adults, it is our responsibility to equip them to control their inside world and make really good choices. You know, I've since had the privilege, after working with those 10 children, of working with thousands of children across all walks of life. Street children, children in orphanages, children who've been trafficked. I've worked with children of ambassadors. I've worked with authors' children. We have an author here with us today. And, you know, no matter the children that I've worked with, all of them have one thing in common. And it's so simple, but yet as adults, we seem to miss it. Children just want to connect. They just need connection. That's one of the missing puzzle pieces for building mentally resilient children, is connection, giving them a place of belonging. Now, I'm really honoured today. Lord Patel mentioned I have a couple of my colleagues here with me who've flown in from around the world. I have a global team of coaches that I've trained up in places such as Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Kenya, Ethiopia, the Bahamas. I want to go there on holiday, I really do. That's why I trained her up. And, you know, all the children are exactly the same. They're just yearning for belonging and connection. And that's what we do as kids' life coaches. So I would love for my team just to stand up and show us who you are. We've got Bronwyn from the USA. We've got Candy representing the UK. Aurélie from Switzerland. Monique representing South Africa. Annette representing Hungary. And Paula, who lovingly held the microphone for us, from Bolivia. And Paula has a lovely twin sister that looks exactly like her, who's also doing my training. She's just started. So we'll have a sister team, which is wonderful. I won't be able to tell the difference, though. Thank you, ladies. So I want to say thank you to these wonderful ladies for taking the time to join us today and being spokespeople for children, because I can't do it alone. And it's about us planting the seeds. Now, I also want to say thank you, ladies, for the lovely gift that you provided. There's a little gift bag with something. There's some Swiss chocolates and some African beads from these lovely ladies that they've lovingly put together for you. So thank you for that, ladies. So going back to why we are here today, how do we break the cycle of aggression perpetuated against innocent victims? I mean, Lord Patel said we don't want to leave here without answers. We'd like to leave here having a bit of direction. And most of us have a very good idea because we work with children. We care about children. So when I started looking at resilience, and I started building resilience through my research over the past 20 years, because I've been working with children as a teacher, a counsellor, a kids' life coach. I found that there were 24 puzzle pieces that fitted really nicely together. Now, unfortunately, my presentation wouldn't work because I wanted to share those with you, but Lord Patel, with your permission, I'll probably email those out to everybody so you can see these 24 puzzle pieces that fit so closely together. But I'm going to share with you the 4 cornerstones, and every one of us here, we are the 4 corners of this puzzle. The 4 corners are connection, collaboration, consistency, and the final one, commitments. When I work with children, when my team coach children, we're in there for the long run. We don't hop in and out, short-term stuff. We work, we build relationships. Remember, Harvard said, children need a connection with an adult, and that's what we provide as kids' life coaches. We are the secret parents that step in and support parents in their role and make their lives easier. Every parent should love that, surely. So, despite the widespread belief that you need grit and self-reliance and some genetic inborn tendency to be resilient, that's not true. Resilience can be built, and it's easy to build. And Lord Patel mentioned that there is a lovely African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. I believe it takes a global village to raise a child. So when I started my career 20 years ago, I never dreamt I would be standing here and have a global team of representatives doing this work. But that is how much I really wanted to see meaningful change, because no matter in the world where we look, the statistics are the same. I did a little research study with my coaches, my brand ambassadors, a short while ago, and I asked everybody to send their statistics to me of what's happening in mental health. Across the board, the waiting lists are the same for mental health services. It doesn't matter where in the world you go. It's happening the same way. So in that context, I want to share something with you, maybe a little story that will just put all of this into context. So there's a legend about this African village where when mothers decide that they're going to conceive of a child, they go and sit under this tree and they think of a song and they sing the song and they invite their child in. And then when they conceive the child, the mother and father, as they're conceiving, they sing the song. And then when the child is born, the midwives and the elders of the village, they all sing the song to the child. And this same child, when the child is naughty or does something wrong, the villagers surround the child and sing the child the song, their special song. I think that's an analogy for kids' life coaching, because every child and all of us have a song within us. And when we stop listening to our own songs, we need someone to show us our music inside us. We need someone to show us how to have hope where possibly there wasn't any. So you may not have grown up in an African tribe. I almost did. I mean, I'm South African, so I would call that a tribe. But this global village, we have to be aware that our world is shrinking, and it's the stress, anxiety, and depression that is no longer exclusively for adults. Yesterday, we had a radio interview, and Aurélie from Switzerland, she mentioned to me the World Health Organization has a statistic that 800,000 suicides per year are what are happening. And I said to her, I have to include that in my speech tomorrow, so I've put it in here, because that's one suicide every 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds. So if we want to create a world that thrives, it doesn't just survive, because right now we're just surviving, right? We're just surviving, we're putting out fires. We have to start supporting children before the age of 12, before things go wrong, not when things go wrong. It has to happen before that. And every child deserves to have a life coach to hold their hand through the ups and downs of life, the little bullying incidents, or children who are self-harming, or children who maybe have engaged in experimental drugs or alcohol. They need a tour guide to take them through that. You know, common humanity recognizes that suffering is part of our lives. It's part of who we are. But we have to teach children how to deal with suffering, and that's what resilience is. We're all going to be knocked down. I was knocked down. I was admitted to hospital, but look where I am now. Your negative experiences don't define you, but so often, like those 2 terrorists I spoke about, lives can be ruined because there's no intervention. So a very relevant question today on International Day of Innocent Children Victims of Aggression would be, how do we coach children to have inner peace and happiness when their worlds outside are so turbulent? Like the 120,000 child soldiers in Africa, or those 40,000 children as young as 7 working in cobalt mines, or the 12 million Indian children. I told myself I wasn't going to get emotional, but this is really touching stuff. When I practiced my speech, I cried. I was like, I'm not going to do that today. But there are 12 million Indian children working in slavery. 3 million children living on the streets of Egypt. And what about the 36,000 child prostitutes in Thailand? What are we doing about those children? How do we give them hope? So my globally relevant coaching model that I've developed is not just about those children on the extreme cases, because we've worked with them. The program works. It's about every child. It's also about the child in a middle-income family, self-harming because they're being bullied at school, just as much as it is the child who has blisters on their hands because they're engaged in slavery and working 12-hour shifts in a mine. I'm on a mission to change the way we look at childhood, though. I don't want to look at children as victims. I really believe that we need to stop focusing on what's going wrong and being reactive and putting out fires. Let's focus on what's right about childhood. Children are amazing. They can teach us such amazing things, and we need to just harness that energy and that capacity and give them the opportunities. So often when we see the world having big problems, we feel like we are small contributors. But it takes each of us as a secret parent contributing in our own small way, because you never know who that child is that you're impacting on. It could be your next Martin Luther King or your next Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or Oprah Winfrey. You don't know the extent and reach of your influence as a secret parent in coaching children. Changing our world doesn't need to be doing big things. It's also the small things. Remember that corner puzzle. Small things done consistently, like my coaches and I do. Consistency is the key. Not having children going from one social worker to the next or to different teachers. And, the system is not servicing our children. They need that one supportive adult. And I believe that we need to connect children with their heart first. A lot of the decisions made relating to children are intellectual decisions, and so they should be. We need intellect, but I believe we need to connect the intellect with the heart as well. Because children need us to be the shining beacon of light. They need us to be the hope. If you look on your table, there's a globe. If you'll just hold that in your hand, that's a gift from me. Right now, you're holding the world in your hand. Okay? All of us hold the world in our hand. And do you see the puzzle pieces inside there? All of those puzzle pieces are part of a big 500-piece puzzle. You don't know what the picture is. I do. You can come and ask me if you want to know what it is. You can choose to build it if you want to. But this is an analogy for how we need to work. We need to put the puzzle pieces together. Because, for 16 years in this career as a kids' life coach, I've been swimming upstream, like this Thames River. I've been swimming upstream, just proving myself quietly, consistently, showing the results. Because for me, results are about the children. If you can see change in the children, and we have lots of measurable results, we statistically measure the children that we work with, but if you can see results in the children, that's where you should be headed. So those puzzle pieces, I'd love for you to network with each other today and speak about what are these missing puzzle pieces to build resilient children? What are people in the room doing? You're welcome to speak to any of my team and ask them questions and find out a bit more about the programs and what we do with the children. It's lots of fun, by the way. We play for a living. You might have noticed the colourful programs. Lord Patel said that he's never, ever had such a colourful program at a formal event. But we work with children and we play for a living, and that's how we connect, because play is the language of childhood. So I want to leave you with a poem from Leo Buscaglia. I don't know if any of you know him. He was a lecturer, since passed, and after one of his students took his life by suicide, he decided to start a non-credit class in his university simply called Love. And he turned it into a book eventually. And he wrote this: "One cannot give what he does not possess. To give love, you must possess love. One cannot teach what he does not understand. To teach love, you must comprehend love. One cannot know what he does not study. To study love, you must live in love. One cannot appreciate what he does not recognize. To recognize love, you must be receptive to love. One cannot have doubt about that which he wishes to trust. To trust love, you must be convinced of love. One cannot admit what he does not yield to. To yield to love, you must be vulnerable to love. One cannot love what he does not dedicate himself to. To dedicate yourself to love, you must be forever growing in love. I believe we need to be striving to support children, to find their inner love, and show them what love is. Because you know what the opposite of aggression is? Love. So today, we need to celebrate the love for children, not the aggression and violence against children. Let's look at the good things, and let's harness those. Because you see, we are part of the solution. And as Gandhi said, we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you.
You can see now why, when I met Zelna, I decided we should do this. We're going to share the toolkit. There's a whole bag of sort of tools and goodies that you give me that you can use working with children. So this is a real opportunity to share some of the expertise that's there through your schools, through your organisations, NGOs, charities that you've been working with. And if we can keep everybody connected together, maybe we can just create a little chat line that says, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? Colette, you've done some fantastic work with mental health and children in Europe. So there's people in this room with huge experience that we can share. And if the kids' life studios are one, the base, the foundations to allow that to happen, it'd be fantastic. If you become the next Secretary of State for Education, well, you know, we've got a platform here within which to learn. I think for us as Social Work England, it's just reinforcing some of the messages that we get out to some of our social workers. You know, it doesn't have to always be about some of the things we're always looking at. I think there's new ways, there's tools. Cam's come from Queen Mary's. We're thinking about trying to get a university engaged with this to credit some of this stuff, to actually make it there, make it teachable. You know, stick it in some of your universities, Bradford University, Queen Mary's. We can make this happen. So, look, you've got an hour, talk to each other, network. There's some amazing people here. Share. Please eat the food, because it'll go to waste, and you'll feel really bad if it goes to waste. And enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Sorry about the weather.